When I was 6 years old, I was in a bomb attack. I remember the screaming. I remember the hysterical situation people were in. One person destroyed the world, killed so many millions of Jews. And I said, if he was able to kill 6 million Jews, maybe I could save 6 million Jews. And I remember an emergency we had of a 7-year-old boy who choked, and we were the ambulance called to save this kid's life. And it took us 21 minutes to arrive. And when we arrived there, we tried CPR on this kid. We already knew that the chances were very low. In that moment, I had the worst moment of my life. I saw a child die waiting for help, and I realized this doctor who lived across the street could have saved him if someone would have thought of calling him. And that's when I thought, I'm going to start Hatzalah in Israel. I'm going to get doctors and regular people like you and me trained, and while the ambulance is on the way fighting traffic, I will have a network of volunteers responding to calls within 90 seconds. I always used to see motorcycles delivering pizza, and these motorcycles never got stuck in traffic. The pizza always got there when the pizza's hot. And us, the ambulances, get there when the patients are cold. What's more important, getting caught or saving lives? And I said, I want to save lives. So that's why I took the risk. It wasn't a political move. It was a 90-second move. Because if you want to get to 90 seconds in every moment, you need to take everyone who's willing to save lives. And this book is the beginning of that story. Why was United Hatzalah so prepared for October 7th? Because we're prepared to save a baby choking. When you're prepared to save a lady on the floor with a heart attack, you're prepared. If you believe in something, fight for it, and don't let anyone else stop you.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Proctor Effect. My guest today, you know who it is because you clicked on this episode and you're probably interested to hear about my conversation with Eli Beer. But I have to say this, Eli is the founder and the head of United Hatzalah, which is a massive, massive organization with over 10,000 volunteers of people literally saving hundreds of thousands of lives every single day. But what's so unique about Eli is that he travels, and his kids, as we'll talk about in this episode, call him Avinu Shabashamayim, their father in heaven. He travels over 200 days a year. He came back to Israel for 3 days during this week. And somehow, some way, thank you to Rebbitzin Batsheva Lovi for hooking up this interview and making it happen. I'm forever grateful for Eli. And I just have to say the last thing before we get into this interview, Eli is a very public figure. He's spoken about so many things in his book, in different interviews and other podcasts. And I specifically tried to ask him questions and bring the conversation to a place where we've touched on stuff that I've publicly never seen before. And even Eli said to me after the interview, wow, did I talk about things today that I've never spoken about publicly before. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into what we discussed today. Without further ado, it's time to jump into my episode with myself and Eli. Enjoy. And we're ready to rock and roll. I'm joined right now, as you guys can see now on this camera, by a very special guest here in our studio in Beit Shemesh, Harav Eli Beer Shlita. Thank you so much for coming from Yerushalayim to join me right now.
It's great to be here, but my name is not Shlita, not Rabbi, but it's okay.
But considering the fact that everything in this book and everything we'll discuss in this episode, I think you might get the title of Rabbi, but we'll see where that goes.
Well, the one who wrote the book is Rabbi, so okay.
True. There we go. And soon to be on the podcast, B'ezrat Hashem. I want to jump right into the story of you, and there's so much I want to discuss. And knowing you and seeing your story, you're walking inspiration, in my opinion. And I kind of want to go back to the beginning of your life, growing up in Yerushalayim. Take me through your early years, kind of some of the experiences that shaped you a little bit, and then we'll go from there.
Well, people hear my English and they think I'm American. Well, I have an American citizenship, but I'm actually Israeli. I live in Israel. I grew up here. I was born here, and English is my mother's tongue, not my mother tongue. So I grew up in Beit Vegan, not too far from here, and I had amazing parents. Grew up in a cheder, like shtisel, the shtisel program. That's how I grew up, and I found myself wandering the streets every time I was kicked out of school, and I ended up in Yad Vashem as a young boy, and I think that really changed my life more or less. Seeing what Hitler did to the Jews. And when I was 6 years old, I was in a bomb attack. And the number 12 bus was very young. And I remember the screaming. I remember the hysterical situation people were in. No one knew what a bomb attack was then. It's not like today. Every kid knows what a war is, what kind of planes are flying, everything. We didn't know anything. This is a very quiet neighborhood in Beit Vegan. And all of a sudden, a bus blows up on a Friday afternoon. And 6 people were murdered. And we had over 50 people injured, and people were just laying there in the street for a very long time. And I think seeing that, and then growing up, going to Yad Vashem a lot, I realized that everyone has to do their part in this world. And I said, my part will be saving people's lives.
And that was from a young age when you were in your earlier years. And you realized that this is something you want to do.
I used to see an ambulance outside. I used to run to see what's happening. I was a kid. I used to hear an ambulance out middle of the class. You know, I have ADHD. ADHD. No one knew what it was then, right? So, so I used to run straight to the window. The rabbi used to say, "What are you doing?" I said, "I want to see the ambulance." And I said, "I want to be in that ambulance. I want to help people. I want to save lives." And I said, when I'll be the age I could, I want to be a doctor or whatever I could, you know, just save people. And that what, you know, pushed me the whole time, you know, seeing what I saw as a young boy, seeing these movies about Hitler and what Hitler was able to do. One person destroyed the world, killed so many millions of Jews, other people as well. He was a massive murderer. No one like him before. And I said, if he was able to kill 6 million Jews, maybe I could save 6 million Jews. And that's how my head was working as a kid. I was always thinking, how could I do that? How could I do that?
I mean, listen, I have to say, the fact that you had the ambitions at that young age to say, if somebody could kill 6 million, I could save 6 million. But it really goes to show kind of your character even at that young age. So I'm curious for, you know, once you got to that point in your life where you're still young, you've seen tragedy happen in front of your eyes, and you realize, okay, this is something I'm interested in. And as you said, you would look out the window and, you know, ambulances are coming and your Rebbe's like, you know, where's Eli going? You know, and you feel a connection to those events that are going on. Take me through the beginning of, did you start volunteering for Hatzalah at a young age? What kind of got you into that path, essentially?
Well, in Israel, they never had Hatzalah before. When I was young, they didn't have Hatzalah. Hatzalah actually existed in Brooklyn, and they had it in Williamsburg and Crown Heights and maybe Lower East Side, but it wasn't existing. We didn't even know what a Hatzalah is. I went to volunteer when I was 15 years old in an ambulance in Jerusalem, in an ambulance service in Magen David Adom. I was there. I did the course. It was like a 44-hour course. It was the first time I ever graduated at anything. Think about what a good student I was. And I graduated the 44-hour course. It was over about 2 weeks because it was like a camp. I was almost 15. And right after the course, I ran to volunteer. And I was very serious about it. I said, I'm going to save people's lives. And I remember the first time I was in the ambulance, I said, I have to save someone. But I realized it's not only saving people's lives. You also do transports of people. You know, people have stomach aches. They have, you know, you need to take care of that too. You have people who think they're dying, but they're not dying. And then you have people who are really dying. By the time you get there, it's too late. And I realized that after a while, I used to write down every call of when we received it. And I was so, you know, excited to go to every call. And I used to write it down, okay, you know, 10:22 a.m. And we used to get there and I used to write down 10:45 a.m. Okay, how long did it take us? And I used to write down all these things. And I realized our average response time was 17 minutes. Not because the ambulance didn't want to get there fast, just the traffic was long. And also, they had a system. You know, I think the same system works everywhere around the world. You have a few ambulances on call. And if someone is calling for help and there is no ambulances, they would call an ambulance from another city. So it's all about luck, really. And I remember an emergency we had of a 7-year-old boy who choked. And this little kid was having lunch and choked on a hot dog. And we were the ambulance called to save this kid's life. And it took us 21 minutes to arrive. And when we arrived there, we tried CPR on this kid. We already knew that the chances were very low. And I was crying while I was doing CPR. I never did CPR on a kid. A little blonde kid with blue eyes. That's all I remember. But all of a sudden, a doctor runs into the house. And he says, I'm a next door neighbor. I want to help. He lived across the street. He saw the ambulance arriving. That's when he came in. And he said, let's work together. He was a doctor, so he took control. And after 45 minutes of CPR, and it's hard, and another ambulance joined us, the doctor says, cover this kid. Nothing else we could do. In that moment, I had the worst moment of my life. I saw a child die waiting for help. And I realized this doctor who lived across the street could have saved him if someone would have thought of calling him. And that's when I thought, I'm going to start Hatzalah in Israel. I'm going to get doctors and regular people like you and me trained. And while the ambulance is on the way fighting traffic, I will have a network of volunteers responding to calls within 90 seconds. And people said, how are you going to do it in 90 seconds? I said, well, we need to get there quick. So we have to have volunteers. Volunteers get there much faster than people you pay, right? Mm-hmm. Then we need to have them get there without any problems going through traffic. I always used to see motorcycles delivering pizza. And these motorcycles never got stuck in traffic. The pizza always got there when the pizza's hot. And us, the ambulances, would get there when the patients are cold. I said, they should have pizza delivered on ambulances and we should go on motorcycles. And I said, we're going to have these ambucycles, motorcycle ambulances responding to calls by volunteers. And that's how the idea started.
So I have to ask, there's so much to unpack here because it's really special that you are an individual at a young stage in your life and you volunteer. As you said, you were 15, you go into the back of an ambulance and you're going on calls and you see that the average response time is 17 minutes, which in today's time, thank God it's not there because of United Hatzalah, but like at that 15, 16-year-old age, and you had the foresight to say, this is a huge problem and we need to fix it. It's very special, first of all, that you had that foresight and you began to think about, okay, what could we do? So now take me back to that point. Once you begin to say, okay, these are the problems we need to solve. We need to up our response time. We need to have more volunteers. As you said, the doctor, right? He was right across the street. And if only he had a beeper, he could have been there and probably saved that child's life. So kind of take me what happens. What was the beginning stages of Hatzalah in Israel at that stage?
Well, we had a very good ambulance service. It's not like we had a bad ambulance service. It was great, but it wasn't perfect. It was great for transport, but it wasn't great for saving lives. And if you go around the world, you still see the same services acting. You call for help. It takes you 2 minutes to get the phone call done, get the dispatcher, get the address, 2 minutes. Now, I want you to stop breathing right now for 2 minutes. Think about it. 2 minutes, you're just giving information. Then the team has to get together, run to an ambulance, get the ambulance started and drive through traffic. And I said, this doesn't make sense. Ambulances don't save lives. People could save lives. So if we get a network of volunteers that they know about the calls immediately, they will get there faster. So when the ambulance arrives, all they have to do is transport someone who's alive, someone who's not brain damaged. So I went to the ambulance service that I volunteered for, and I offered them to do this. I came there. I said, I volunteer here at least twice a week. They knew who I was. And I was very eager to start this. And I said, we need to get people all around responding to calls before ambulances. And they didn't like the idea. And I found myself quite fast outside a building. Said, don't ever come back again with these ideas. And I was like stuck with a great idea. How do we implement a great idea like this? Because the problem is, Hatzalah now is such a popular thing. Everywhere around the world there is Hatzalah. Every Jewish community has Hatzalah. But people don't think that we didn't have a number. People can call us. We were depending on their calls, like the 911 calls, to share the calls with us through the beepers. We had these pagers. Today it's used by Hezbollah, but then it was used by medical people. If you remember, every doctor had, you're too young to know
Definitely
that.
Too young, but
every doctor had a pager. Today every Hezbollah guy has a pager. But then they used to walk around with pagers. I said, let's buy pagers for everyone and ask Magen David Adom to share the calls with us. But they said, no, it's not going to happen. A lot of bureaucracy, liability. Also. I can understand them. I'm not blaming them. They said, no, it's like they didn't know how serious this is going to be. So I said, okay, I don't need your help. I'll manage on my own. Now, Israel was created with the greatest invention ever that was created in Israel. This invention was created in Israel. It was called chutzpah, right? Chutzpah is an Israeli thing. Now, if we hear no, it only motivates us even more to do it. So when I heard a no, I said, okay, I'll manage on my own. Ani stader. You know what that is? Ani stader.
Like, I got this.
So I went ahead to New York that summer. I went to a place called Radio Shack. God bless their memory. I don't know if you know them.
I'm definitely familiar.
And they used to sell walkie-talkies, like scanners. And if you bought one of their scanner walkie-talkies, you could hear everyone. You could hear the police. You could hear the fire. So I literally had a way of listening into their calls without permission. So I came back to Israel. I had to hide in my luggage because I didn't want, I broke it into pieces so I don't get caught by customs. And I was scared. I brought it into Israel and I started an underground command center. And we bought pagers. We gave it to the volunteers and we started responding to emergency calls. It wasn't our emergency calls. It was their emergency calls, but we would get there first because we had 15 volunteers. And it started spreading around the city. But in the second day of my activity, we had a call. My father had a bookshop in Beit Vegan. It was called Beer's Bookshop. Everyone knew the bookshop. They used to sell English Sforim, but a lot of Hebrew Sforim as well. And it was a Jewish bookshop. And my father had a little basement downstairs, and that's where I was. I had I had a little microphone, and I used to talk in the walkie-talkie to the guys, and it was very cool. But all of a sudden, I hear a call coming in of a man hit by a car, and I am a block away, and I just run out of the bookshop. My father didn't know what happened. I was just running out, and I'm holding the walkie-talkie, and I'm running towards that incident on Rehova Pisgah 45, and they had a scene of a lot of people all around. And a man, just random person, was on the floor. And I run over and he's bleeding from a bunch of places. And I see he's bleeding from his neck, but I had no bandages on me. So I said, I need to stop his bleeding. I knew I have to do that. The first thing you do is control bleeding. He was still breathing, so I knew he's breathing. He's alive, but he was bleeding and he might lose too much blood. So I took my yarmulke off my head and I just folded it. And I did a very simple thing. It's not like a heroic thing, but I did the right thing, stopping his bleeding. I could have used my shirt or anything else, but I took my yarmulke because it was so, easy to take. And I just pushed it in and I put pressure on it and I stopped the bleeding. And then eventually the ambulance came to him to the hospital. And then 2 days later, I get a phone call from someone. He says, "Are you Eli Beer?" I said, "Yes." Now, everyone knew my father because he was like the store in Beit Vegan. So he got my father's phone number at home. He calls. He says, you took care of my father 2 days ago. And I said, "Yeah, I thought he died." I didn't know if he survived or not. And he says, "My father woke up this morning at Hadassah Hospital. He would like you to come visit him. He wants to thank you for saving his life." And that moment changed my life. Another time, the second time changed my life. I realized this is the first time I actually saved someone. It's not like I jumped off a plane to save the world like Superman. I just stopped the bleeding of someone. But that bleeding was stopped on time. So I went to visit him, and then when I got a hug from him, he said in Hebrew, "Toda rabba she'etzalta oti." Thank you for saving me. And I saw he had a number on his arm. And that's all I needed in my life. That was what pushed me to do what I do today.
And how old were you at that time?
16 and a half years old.
Wow. So at a 16...
This is... how old am I? I'm 52, so this is 36 years ago almost.
Wow. When you started this command center and you're a 16-year-old kid, as you said before, you have to have a little bit of chutzpah, right? They said, "No, we're not going to do this idea. Fine, I'll do it on my own." Did you ever get worried that you're intercepting their calls? So when you're there and you're there first, and then essentially the real ambulance comes, were you ever worried they'll be like, "Hey, how'd this happen? How'd you get here first?"
I was, but I knew, I always worry. I even worry today. Everything I do, you have to be, only people who are not smart don't worry. I'm always worried about things. And I said, I made a calculation. What's more important? Getting caught or saving lives? And I said, I want to save lives. So that's why I took the risk.
Wow. I mean, listen, it's the easiest way to answer that question. Save a life or you're not going to get in trouble.
And I do this all the time. I think I disrupted the biggest thing United Hatzalah did in Hatzalah. This was called Hatzalah Jerusalem then. We disrupted the ambulance system in Israel. It was a union service, which is a great service. I'm not against union. Very controlled by union. Histadrut, in Israel, when the airports go to strike. So they control the service. That means when you call for an ambulance, they show up. I broke that. And now anyone could actually respond to an emergency call. Any EMT, any doctor, any nurse. And instead of just having someone with a uniform and a paid service, you could actually have your next door neighbor save your life, which is something that didn't exist in Israel. Now I'm proud that this disruption actually helps the whole system. They became better. They are actually much better than what they were before. So I take that as credit as well. The ambucycles you see everywhere in Israel. Now you see everyone using them. Many other organizations are starting to copy this idea, which is I'm very, very proud of. And I think the fact that we have United Hatzalah in Israel gives Israel a better service from everyone, not only from us.
1,000%. And I've heard you say this before. I believe that if you're doing something that someone else is copying, it's a good idea. And if you're doing something that they're not copying, probably it's not.
Right. I actually get sometimes, we have so many different projects United Hatzalah is doing. We're getting close to 10,000 volunteers.
Wow.
And think about it. Every time we start a project and I say, they're not copying us, that means we're not doing a good job. Like when I saw the ambulances, when the ambucycles are copied, I said, okay, that means we did a good job. And a lot of people were very upset. They're copying us. I said, I hug every time I see anyone driving an ambucycle, no matter if it's from United Hatzalah or from someone else. I give them a hug. I said, kol hakavod. I know it's my baby. And I know, and they tell me, Eli, if it wasn't for you, we would not have this. And I think, look at New York City, for instance. They don't have ambucycles. Imagine to yourself one day, Hatzalah of New York start using ambucycles. I bet with you, the fire department of New York are going to start using ambucycles. But you don't have competition. You don't have competition. So I think competition brings a better service for everyone. And I think United Hatzalah's biggest success is not only what United Hatzalah does, but what others do because of United Hatzalah.
I'm going to echo that because it's really true. And as people reading this book, and we'll talk about that after, is, as you've grown, all the other institutions in Israel kind of grew into their own and took a lot of ideas from you. I kind of want to just go back into the part of the story where we were at. You're 16 years old, right? And you make an underground command center and you're slowly building up United Hatzalah. And typically a kid at that age is in school. So take me through kind of what happens in the years following. When do you essentially find, your amazing wife that, supports you with everything that you do right now, and then kind of take me from there a little bit?
Well, listen, I grew up very differently than my brothers and sisters. My parents made Aliyah from New York, and my brothers and sisters went to school. And then I was the only one born in Israel, and I ended up in a cheder. And it wasn't my place. I didn't find myself doing well in cheder, so I had to find other activities. So I was, when I was 12 years old, I was kicked out of school, out of cheder. And the Rebbe said, you know what, we'll let you graduate early. And I was very happy too. My father wasn't too happy, but I ended up working for my father in my bookstore. And I think I learned everything from my father. My father was an incredible human being. I talk a lot about my father in the book. And I always wanted to learn from my father because he was such an incredible, straight, honest human being. And he loved Israel. Although he was very, very Haredi, like frum. He wore a gartel and he had a long beketcha. He was like a little Hasidish, but he was like a Zionist Hasidish. Like the type I really felt close to. My father used to see soldiers, he used to hug them. And every Shabbat, we had lots of guests by our home, people I didn't know and he didn't know. He just invite kids that came to Israel. Today, kids have so much variety where to go for Shabbat. Then, how many American families were here? Not many. So they used to end up, every Shabbat, we had 10 guests. So I learned a lot of English. I learned a lot of things from people who came to us for Shabbat. And I knew my future wife, Gitti, because she was my next door neighbor. And she was a Beis Yaakov girl, very firm, Orthodox Jewish girl. And I'm like, I fell in love with her very early. And it was not easy to convince her. She didn't want to date me because she was like the shidduch type, and I wasn't. And I had to somehow find ways of how to convince her to take interest. And you know me, I have chutzpah, right? So I did what I have to do. And she fell for it. And it was not easy, but thank God. And I could say that it was the greatest decision I ever did. I mean, I don't know how she fell into it, and I think she's happy.
I mean, obviously, Baruch Hashem, and you live to tell the tale, and you've been married for many years, and you got married at 19, which is, a very young age, right?
Very young age, and I have 5 beautiful, amazing kids, 5 grandchildren. Wow. And I think my biggest success is not only the organization, is really my children. They copied what I do. Every one of my kids, 5 of my kids are EMTs now. And 2 of my son-in-laws are EMTs. My wife's a paramedic. Oh, sorry, my daughter's a paramedic. She's going to kill me. I said she's an EMT. She's a paramedic and a midwife and a nurse. And my wife's a paramedic and my kids are EMTs. So they're all running to calls all day. They love it. And they never saw me at home because I was always flying. I'm in the air at least once a week. And I send them WhatsApps from the sky and my kids call me Avinu Shabashamayim.
What a name. What a name. And I have to ask, just, kind of before we get to that, because I do want to speak about, you're traveling, and I've actually seen you many times in airports in the United States. And I'm like, gosh, I thought this guy lives in Israel. I've seen him all over. But, I kind of just want to jump back a little bit is, you got married at 19 and you started technically the inception of Hatzalah was when you were 16. So I want to take me after kind of you get married to where were you at with Hatzalah and kind of take me through some of the stages and the humps that you had to get over to kind of grow from there at that age.
Well, listen, you want to know before marriage or after marriage?
You go a little bit before, but
I was very busy with Hatzalah before, and I was also busy with a few businesses I had. So I was I had the biggest business in Arbat Aminim, the 4 species, in Jerusalem, Yerushalayim. I had 20 locations around Jerusalem selling Arbat Aminim. I was a macher. Officially a macher. And it was a hard job. It was a few months of work, but it was worth it. And I had a few other a tour business. And actually, I'm shouting out to my friend from Beit Shemesh, Shirley Jacobson, who is my closest friend then. And he helped me with getting my wife convinced to marry me.
What does that mean?
I'm not going to get into it.
We'll get into it.
But it was like,
for those that know, they know.
They know. It's a secret one day, my next podcast.
Exactly.
But Shirley Jacobson is a tour guide today, but he actually was in business with me in tours. We had tours all around the country, buses. So I was busy with a lot of businesses, but while I was doing this, I also promoted Hatzalah. They had a bunch of from people who joined Hatzalah. It was really interesting to see Hasidim join Hatzalah. It was like the greatest thing ever because Hasidim loved Hatzalah. Even in Brooklyn, you see most of the people there are Hasidim. And in Israel, I always joke around. I'd say, why so many Orthodox join Hatzalah? It's because the only way to run out of shul anytime you want. Like, how else are you going to just say, Rabbi, I'm just tired. I don't want to go. No, I have a Hatzalah call,
Especially on Shabbos.
Exactly. So we actually went through a lot of bumps. I could tell you that we had a lot of opposition in the frum communities. Forget about Magen David Adom, a lot of opposition, of course. They didn't like that idea. We had to fight it. And you see, we're still existing 36 years later. But the rabbis in the beginning did not understand what we were doing. And a lot of them were in opposition to the idea. Who gave you the permission to drive on Shabbat? Now, according to Halacha, Rav Moshe Feinstein, because he was the Rav of Hatzalah in New York, actually gave psaks about driving to emergency call and coming back from an emergency call. Here in Israel, a lot of the Rabbanim were not, aligned with Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. A lot of them came from the Eidah Charedis. So we actually went to the biggest rabbi then, was Moshe Halberstam, one of the biggest rabbis, Moshe Halberstam. And we went to him to be our posek. And he was very tough, but and people couldn't go against him. He was like the Eidah Charedis. And he gave us the kosher stamp. You go to emergency calls, and he gave us ways how to come back. And it was not easy. It was a lot of complications because Shabbat is Shabbat. And I always say I'm very proud of the fact that we're the first organization in Israel that ever brought this idea from people to be responsible, not only about themselves, about the community, about others, about not even Jews. They go out to calls on Shabbat. They would never go make $1 million on Shabbat to drive a car. They will never do that. But to save a non-Jewish person on Shabbat, they would do for free, which is amazing. It was all because of what we did with Rav Moshe Halberstam. And I used to drive Rav Moshe Halberstam. I was a young boy. I used to drive him. He loved me. I loved him. And we came from very different backgrounds. And he thought that this was the greatest thing from people. We had a lot of opposition with the motorcycles. We had signs in the streets against us. You know, they call them in Hebrew pashkevilim. You know, these signs, that was the first Facebook. You know, when he put in Mesharim, all these signs, when you want to write against someone, you put a big sign. This was signs against the idea of the motorcycles, that we are bringing, like, they never saw a Haredi guy driving a motorcycle. I mean, today, you would never think about it. You see a guy driving a motorcycle, you wouldn't think. Then, no one. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't even see a guy driving a bicycle who was with a beard and a pants and everything. Now it's like normal. But we actually disrupted everything and changed it for the good.
1,000% for the good. And I have to ask kind of on that specifically, is that when you started United Hatzalah, right? If people understand the picture so far where we're at in your story, is that you started it because you saw a need and then you want to fill the need. And this was a very personal thing for you because you saw tragedy in front of your own eyes. So as you're going through these stages and you're building it up, and now, as you said, people are plastering signs on the street against what you're trying to do. Did you take it personally? Like what kept you going and like motivated?
Well, I knew it's part of the success. When you get successful, you'll have people going against you. I learned it as a kid. My father told me about Mordechai Hayudi from the Megillah. He was the greatest Jew in the world. I don't think there was in history anyone. Moshe Rabbeinu saved only a third of the Jewish people, I think, right? Mm-hmm. Mordechai saved the entire Jewish people. And what does it say in the Megillah? V'haya ratzui lerov echav. He was loved by most of his brothers. And I was always wondering, and I asked my father, and he says, once you succeed in life, no matter if you save someone's life and you're successful, some people will be jealous. Even the ones you save. So my father told me, be prepared, many years ago. So when we started getting these motorcycles and people were writing against us, and my name was posted in the streets, I was very embarrassed in the beginning, but I said, you know what? That's part of the success. When you have someone writing against you or talking against you, that means you're doing something. And I'm proud of it. Because if I didn't do anything, no one would copy us and no one would talk against us. And I think I learned a lot from my father. My father told me that during the Holocaust, he grew up in America. He was a little boy. He was raising money for United Hatzalah. And even then, they had politics in the Jewish communities. What they're doing the right thing, they're not doing the right thing. Aaron Kotler, who was a Gadol Ador, was driving on Shabbat to raise money for the Jews running, and a lot of people went against him. Some people went very against him. Like people went against a lot of things that people were doing to save lives. I mean, now my father said to me something very interesting I'll never forget. After the Holocaust, my father raised, in today's money, I would say hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he was a kid. He raised every day money from businesses, and he went into people's shops and he asked them for money to save Jews running out of Europe. And he told me a story that someone threw him out of a store. And he said, the problems in Europe are not my problems. I'm a Jew, but I have to take care of Americans. I'm Americans. The Europeans should take care of themselves. There are many rich people there. And my father was thrown out of a store and he was crying outside, and someone came to him and he said, why are you crying? He told him, he said, come to my store. I will give you $5 to help the Jews. But come to me every week. I want to give you another $5. And that's where my father get the motivation. So whenever I have a hard time and someone is not happy with what I do or whatever, I think about my father, what he did during the Holocaust. So my father said after the Holocaust, people were not sorry for giving, for donating. People were sorry they didn't give enough. They didn't donate enough. And he said, when you grow up, you'll see more and more people that criticized you one day will be the biggest Hasidim by you.
It's a phenomenal point. And it's what's interesting is that about your dad, which I never knew this, is that I think this is probably where you get a little bit of your fundraising ability from. if your fact that your dad raised all that money when you were a young kid. And, speaking about also at the stage where you were at in life when you started United Hatzalah was 16. And as it keeps growing and growing, as you said before, also, you had other businesses that you were doing. When did you get to that point where you were like, that's it, I'm all in, Hatzalah, this is my thing, I'm going to start fundraising money? Like, when did that kind of come into fruition?
Well, so many years I was running a real estate company here in Israel. My father also was one of the founders of a cemetery in Israel called Eretz Chaim right here in Beit Shemesh. I was busy with that. So I was for many years 100% volunteer in Hatzalah. I was at Hatzalah Jerusalem, then Hatzalah Israel. But 20 years ago, during the Second Lebanese War, that's when I realized that we need to create United Hatzalah. We had a lot of politics in the organization. I decided I want to open it up to non-religious volunteers, non-Orthodox volunteers. I want to open it up to non-Jewish volunteers, to bring non-Jews to volunteer in Hatzalah. And a lot of people were opposition. I went part of building, and I'm saying this to anyone who's listening, don't get intimidated when people go against you. If you believe in the mission, and this is the right mission, fight for it. Don't care what people talk or write about you. People are jealous. They write things because you're successful. So I actually, during the war, the Second Lebanese War, I was in the bomb shelters in Tzfat. Nachi Klein, a Hasidic Jew. Everyone around me were Hasidim. Missiles were flying towards us from Lebanon, like today, by the way. Nothing really changed, just the missile got bigger. And we were in Tzfat. It was scary. And I said, what's going on in Nahariya? And I was like, trying to find out. We went to Nahariya. We found an old man that was in his bomb shelter for days, called for help. No one came to help him. We found him there alone. He was a Holocaust survivor in his bomb shelter. He didn't have food, no water. In a terrible condition. We had to wash him with a hose. It was the worst thing I ever saw. A man, a human being who was in a bomb shelter and everyone was busy. It was a terrible war. It was a surprise war, more or less. And Israel was losing that war. So I said, I'm going to start United Hatzalah. I want to have every community in Israel volunteers. When I said that, huge politics started. No, you can't have people who are not from, you can't have people who are not religious, you can't have people, when I said women, wow, it was like, that was a nuclear war. And thank God, I think this war was a 2-year war. Inside the organization, we rebuilt the organization called United Hatzalah. We joined in everyone who wants to be part of it. We checked 2 things. Are they good people? Are they willing to go out and help other people? And if they are, let's take them. And I could say that this organization's success, United Hatzalah, is because of that day of October, of I think it was July sometime in 2006 during the war. I don't remember the month, July or August, but one of the months. It was the busiest 2 years of my life. And the amounts of wars we went through internally, just because people didn't want to give. I mean, it was a club. It was a club. You're breaking the club and letting everyone in. And we're the first Hatzalah in the world that actually said, anyone who wants to join could join. Men, women, religious, secular, Jewish, non-Jewish. We do it by halacha. Everything by us is by halacha. But halacha says saving lives. The Torah is now, Matan Torah. I mean, I know we have 613 mitzvahs, Aseres Hadibros, but when it comes to saving lives, you put everything aside, right? So we could put the differences of looks, of religion, of everything else to save someone's life. And I believed in it, and thank God I did it.
And it's what's also interesting about you say, because there's a few things I want to touch on there, is that, the evolution of United Hatzalah was you were the first to have women volunteers, and now I believe you have over 2,500, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? Is that the number?
Correct.
Which is really like it speaks to kind of the environment that you're able to cultivate, which is really unique. And another point and I kind of want to touch on this a little now, is we know pikuach nefesh, saving someone's life, is docha everything. You put aside any mitzvah, you go in your car on Shabbos, And that point of what you just said of you're saving someone's life. Doesn't matter if you have a yarmulke. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, if you're not. Why do you think that took time for like the public to kind of, come to a level of comfortability with? If it's pretty clear, Baruch Hashem, and obviously you were the visionary for that, but what do you think took the public to kind of, jump on board with that idea of let's bring everybody involved, especially, Muslims and Arabs, correct?
Well, I'll tell you the first, I didn't talk a lot about it, so I could speak about this almost like in the first time I'm talking so publicly. The amount of hatred I had towards me when I joined non-Jewish people to United Hatzalah was, I never in my life saw a thing like that. It was terrible. It was like people were blaming me for like being a left-wing radical from J Street, or even worse. Like they thought, okay, Eli Beer is joining Arabs to Hatzalah. He must be a terrorist sympathizer. And people actually went against me. And I'm not going to mention names because today they're very good friends of mine, but they went against me. Someone needs Hatzalah.
We'll cut that part out.
So people actually went against me for joining non-Jews to Hatzalah because they said, I am doing this for political reasons. People blaming me. People were talking against me. And I was like attacked by a group of people that went against me publicly, even on the radio in Israel. I had interviews with hosts that interviewed me about this. Non-religious people were calling me from Galei Tzahal, Reshet Bet. Why is so-and-so going against you? And these people who went against me today are very close friends of mine. Because they know, I don't care if the person is Naragvot, like they say, the kids on the hills. I don't believe in the name settlers. They're not settlers. They're living in the land of Israel. But I'm actually a lover of Israel, lover of the entire Israel. For me, there is no West Bank, East Bank. It's all one bank. We're in Israel. Okay, so I said, anyone who lives in Israel, if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Druze, if you're Bedouin, you're Cherkessi, United Hatzalah will accept you if you want to save lives. Of course, we check everyone. We want to check the background. The people who went against me and spoke against me are now not my best friends, but very close friends and big supporters. And I can mention one of them is Itamar Ben-Gvir. And he loves me, and he loves United Hatzalah. And he realized it wasn't a political move. It was a 90-second move. Because if you want to get to 90 seconds in every moment, we're not there yet, but we're on the way there. You need to take everyone who's willing to save lives. You can't say, I want to get to 90 seconds with blonde, blue eyes Jews, right? You can't do that. So you need to take anyone who's willing to do that. And it's unbelievable. I was just at the headquarters of Hatzalah today in Jerusalem. And I met two Arab women with hijabs. And she told me that because of United Hatzalah, her name is Rania. And maybe you could show her picture here. She told me that her life was changed because of United Hatzalah. And she met a husband because of United Hatzalah, because he was a volunteer, an Arab volunteer of United Hatzalah, who she met because of United Hatzalah. And she has two little cute kids. And she's the biggest lover of saving lives. She's an advocate of saving lives. Could you imagine? No one in the world is talking about this. When Tucker Carlson says his lies on his podcasts, he's lying about Israel, about that we're torturing Arabs, that we are doing apartheid and everything else. He's a liar. Look at United Hatzalah, you see the truth. We have 1,000 Arabs in United Hatzalah.
Kol hakavod. I just got to say, it's the fact that you did something and you took the heat from people, because that's one of the hardest things to go out and walk publicly when you have all these voices coming at you. And especially, you said also the media, did you, for that part of your life of, you're a public figure essentially at that stage and you're getting all this negativity. Was that ever hard for your family? Obviously you're here to save lives and the mission is there, but from a personal standpoint, was that ever something you thought to yourself, okay, maybe I should scale back a little bit. Maybe I should be a little careful with what I'm doing, or was that not a problem for your family?
I'll tell you, sometimes it's hard when you see people talk against you and they don't know what they're talking, or they lie. There was many people who talk against me and they say the truth. I'm okay with it. It's fine. I have to deal with the truth. If someone says Eli Beer is bald, I am bald. Look at me. I am. I'm a little chubby.
You look great, to just say.
But if someone makes up stories and lies and conspiracies, that's a hard thing. But I realized these people are losers. They have nothing else to do in life. They're not doing anything of their own. They're trying to demolish other people's work. So I realized after a while, the more of these people who do these, it gives me more motivation to work harder. Like I know this book motivates tens of thousands of young boys and girls who read this book, 90 seconds, which I think this should be like in every school, they should teach this. This is a book of a kid who was thrown out of Cheder. I heard noise of ambulances. I was listening to the ambulances. I wasn't listening to him. And he threw me out of class. He threw me out of school. And I'm proud that his son volunteers for United Hatzalah. Like I am proud. Every time I see his son, I give him a hug. I don't tell him why, and he doesn't know English, so he won't listen to this podcast. But the fact is that I think all these people who gave me a hardship around my lifetime made me stronger and made me more, strong with my idea that I have to continue this. 90 seconds will be forever. And I will continue fighting to make sure that we have more and more volunteers. And I really want to get to 90 seconds everywhere around Israel.
Props to you for obviously having that vision and for also looking back at your story at this point and saying that, the rabbi that didn't treat you nicely or this person that was hating on you was all part of your picture. Because obviously that's true, but it's hard to sometimes look at it and say, this person obviously made me who I am today. And it just goes to show, for your character, for who you are, that's the perspective you're able to have. And, another thing I kind of want to channel into right now, which is what you've alluded to in the beginning of the episode, which was you travel as your children say, Avinu Shabbat Shemaim, almost 200 days a year. And as I mentioned, I've seen you in airports and stuff. So there's a whole other side of Hatzalah, which I think, people don't really realize, which is you have all these volunteers, you're growing, you have all the motorcycles, you have all the people, but financially, the money has to be coming from somewhere. And I think for your main job, at least for right now, you're traveling a lot to fundraise. So take me through that a little bit of what that side of the job is now for you to kind of traveling a lot and meeting all these people and kind of take me through that a little bit.
Well, listen, today I have the best management team that any organization could have. I'm really proud of it. I mean, we are responding to over 700,000 calls a year. And the calls we respond to are life and death. These are not situations this is not like, okay, call us and we'll come tomorrow. We're coming fast. We're coming immediately. So volunteers put their life in danger. We had volunteers killed on their way to save people. And we have volunteers who are not alive today because they went to save people, either on October 7th or on a regular emergency call on an ambush cycle. So the responsibility is huge. So I built an incredible team in Israel. We have a CEO in Israel, and his name is Ehud Davidson. We every 5 years switch CEOs, which is something that is very unique to United Hatzalah. The liability over the organization, the responsibility, it's a big, big organization and a lot of volunteers. And every volunteer is harder to manage than an employee. So we have incredible, Ehud Davidson is a professor a medical professor. He was the head of Soroka Hospital and the head of Meir Hospital and then the head of all the Kupat Cholim Klalit in Israel. And I hired him 2 years ago to run the organization in Israel. I have an international CEO. So I really do the advocating and fundraising and meeting people and the donors. I'll be by you soon. And I meet them and I tell them about what we do and I get them to support. Not always I'm successful. I go out many times, trying my best to raise money. And I tell people I need more volunteers. I need more ambulances. I need more ambucycles. I need more support for other things. And people say yes or no. And I know how to accept a no as well. But I know if I don't try, it's never going to happen. So that's why I travel so much. Because when you don't go to someone and meet them face to face, like I'm here, right? It would be different if I would do this call with you on Zoom, right? Or on the phone. So I meet people and I travel to Australia. I'm going next week. And then I'm coming back for 3 days and I'm going to New York. So, and that's how my life is. And I meet the greatest people in the world. I think one of the greatest things I could have got as a gift for my life is meeting the greatest people in the world. Every time I meet someone with bad energy, I don't raise money from them. I walk out. I love the people I love, and I raise money from people I love, and they get connected to me, and I get connected to them, and they love the organization. But I meet the greatest people.
And to that point, actually, you literally just took the next thought of my mind of some of these people that you've met. Obviously, people have seen pictures of you meeting the presidents and stuff like that. But I think something that's kind of relevant that happened not too long ago, I forgot exactly the time, like maybe 6 months ago, was Floyd Mayweather and kind of him coming to Israel and doing a lot with United Hatzalah. Take me through that a little bit, because I'm sure a lot of people are curious to hear what that interaction was like, how he kind of got connected with you and everything.
Look, he came to Israel a few times, and when he came, the first time he came, I helped him actually get into Israel. He came, I think it was during the beginning of COVID, and he came on a private jet from Dubai, and no one was flying from Dubai straight to Israel. They didn't even have a treaty then yet. It was like the peace was just happening, the Abraham Accords. And he came to Israel, and I said, okay, I'll get you into Israel, but my condition is you visit United Hatzalah. And I knew part of raising money is awareness, is PR. And he is the king of PR. Like, everyone knows who he is. I mean, I walk in the street, a few people know me. He walks the street, everyone knows him. It's funny, the Israelis all know him. So he came here and he visited United Hatzalah. It was a great gift that he did. And then he came again, he visited again, and he was very helpful. He was very supportive of Israel. But we have visitors come all the time. Like, we had, you name it, celebrities and presidents and prime ministers. Bibi was by us in the last 2 years, twice. The president Herzog was by us twice. Knesset members, any lover of Israel. You don't have to be a Zionist, but love Israel, okay? It could be Haredi parties, secular parties, and a few Arab parties. Not most of them didn't come, but some of them did. And they actually visited and loved this organization. And American, here, Mike Pompeo, who's the Secretary of State and loves United Hatzalah. Why is that? Donald Trump donated to United Hatzalah. The president of the United States, before he was president, donated United Hatzalah $100,000 because they love what we do. The idea is great. We are including everyone. We're helping everyone. We don't care who you are. And I really think this is tikkun olam, like they say, kiddush Hashem. And really, the second thing we do besides saving lives is really doing a kiddush Hashem. So whenever someone is really critical against United Hatzalah, I always say, listen, think about the aspect of Kiddush Hashem. I don't think there's a bigger cure of organization than Hatzalah in general and United Hatzalah in Israel.
Wow. I mean, also, to add to that, not only a cure organization, but making shadchanis. And even not even making Jewish matches, obviously, as you said before, making an Arab match with... I
want to tell you something about shadchanis. I made over 100 shidduchs. Not directly, not like, hey, yo, meet, I actually, some of them I did, but I actually made a lot of events where people met their future wife or husband. And most of them, of course, in America, big events, but here in Israel too. Many volunteers met in United Hatzalah. And I think this is a great added value to what we do. I really love the fact that we have so many shidduchs coming out of United Hatzalah. Probably a lot more than 100, but I know about 100. And it's great. I just met someone in New York. Oh, okay. So I funny story. Last week I had some guy calls me. He's a big donor of mine. And he's a great guy, many years. And he's calling me, screaming at me, you promise you're going to find a shidduch for my son? And he promised $1 million donation if I find. I said, listen, I said, give me a down payment for it. And he says, I'll give you $1 million if you donate, if you find a shidduch for my son. So he's in his already early 40s. I tried, I wasn't successful. So then he calls me and he's screaming at me, see, you promised you never did it, but I'm not giving you the money because he found on his own. So I said, really, I'm so happy for you. Really, that made me so happy. I want to call your son to wish him a congratulations, Mazal Tov. I call his son. I say, hey, Rob, how you doing? Mazel Tov. He says, thank you. I'm so happy. He says, do you know where I met her? I said, no. He said, I met her in a United Hatzalah gala. He said, I was in the gala. I met her. I said, are you serious? Why did you tell me? He says, I forgot to tell you. I said, I cursed him. And then I said, I'm calling your father now.
and then what happens?
We're negotiating.
There you go. And I mean, first of all, the awesome story and just the fact that you've had a part in 100 plus shidduchim around, like that's really, talk about the schar you get from this stuff, that's a whole. I
want to, like, if I didn't have United Hatzalah, if everyone was well and everyone was healthy and everyone was like not accidents and no bomb attacks, I would probably have a shidduch business. I love having people meet other people and get marry them off, have kids. And you know what? These 2 little kids I saw today just made me happy. You know, they're going to be good kids. I know that because their mother is a great person. And this is what I love besides Hatzalah.
Well, I mean, kol hakavod, and it is really special that the fact that you have that other side of you too. And I also, if you know Eliza Ben Shalom, the Jewish matchmaker, I interviewed her a few weeks ago. So you got a little competition. Eliza, just have to say.
She's probably more successful because she deals with it every day. So
there you go. Speaking about dealing of the day, and actually this gives me the perfect time to talk about this, is that, you know, as we're discussing the entire story of United Hatzalah, right? And you and people get a better understanding of you. You came into this, you know, podcast and you had this in your hand. And first of all, I got super excited because this is for me now.
I gave it for you because it matches your hair.
That's the thumbnail for today. I want you to talk about this a little bit, you know, because people are understanding a little bit about you and the story of United Hatzalah, but this is really a lot more. And talk about this a little bit.
But I want to tell you something. First of all, I must say the truth. This front cover took us about 2 hours to take a picture of this.
It's a real picture.
This is a real picture. The problem is my eyes were closed and they had to redo my eyes. So it looks terrible. It wasn't AI then. And the photographer felt so bad because he couldn't see my eyes. We had hundreds of volunteers here. We had to somehow fix it a little because it was on a Friday afternoon near Sderot, before the war, of course. So this is an incredible book written by Rabbi Nachman Seltzer, who lives here in Beit Shemesh, and he wrote over 50 books. It's published by Art Scroll. It's the first book. He wrote a second book after October 7th called Angels in Orange, about stories about what happened on the 7th of October. United Hatzalah, actually, on the 7th of October, were the first ones to run in and save lives, and actually ran into every kibbutz, whatever they could get in. Some kibbutzes you couldn't get in, but on the kibbutzim, on the yeshuvim, on the borders of the kibbutzim, waiting for people to come out and save their lives. And thousands of people were treated that day by United Hatzalah, volunteers who left from Beit Shemesh, from Yerushalayim, from Ra'anana, from Tel Aviv, from Bnei Brak, from every city, running in. And that day was a tragic day for all Am Yisrael, but we're still traumatized from that day because we had volunteers injured and volunteers who were killed that day. And this book is the beginning of that story. Why was United Hatzalah so prepared for October 7th? And my answer is always, because we're prepared to save a baby choking. When you're prepared to save a lady on the floor with a heart attack, or a baby choking or a car accident, you're always prepared. So when a war starts, you're prepared. The army wasn't prepared to save a baby. The army has to get prepared for war. Army's not always prepared for war. It takes time. So I think United Hatzalah is an example of what Israel always needs. Organizations who are always ready to go help people. And this book shows an entire story really about my journey. A lot of stories I couldn't share in this book. It's an Art Scroll book, so they had to censor a few of the stories. How I met my wife, I promised to tell it in my next
the next podcast.
How I convinced her to marry me. We were discussing this about should I share it or not, but it was like she's happy. I had to fool her into it.
If anybody finds Shirley Jacobson, that's another way you can find out the story there too.
Yeah, take Shirley as your tour guide. He's a great tour guide.
And put your tour, you'll find out the story
of how Ellie
met his wife. I'm actually going to say this now. I just got this book, so that means I'm going to read it. And if you want to read it, I'll put the link down below in the show notes for people. And we're at the point in the episode right now where we're kind of ending off a little bit. And there's one question I want to leave you with, and for all the listeners, is that for anybody that's watching this episode, wherever they're at in life, Jewish, not Jewish, if you had one message to tell them that was like, keep this in your pocket and take it with you for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Wow. I would need another hour for that, but you have to say one message. Listen, if you believe in something, fight for it, and don't let anyone else stop you. Because, I've seen in my own life how many times people tried stopping me from creating this organization. Even till today, people still think I shouldn't do this. Oh, it's not your responsibility. Others should do it. They're the national organization. Many people, even till today. So if you believe in something, don't let anyone discourage you. And I think that's really I feel like sometimes I almost got discouraged by people. And I believed in the mission, fighting for the mission. And now I have tens of thousands of people who believe in this mission, maybe hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions, people who support United Hatzalah.
It's phenomenal advice, and it's so true. And for people that got to this point in the episode and they understand your story, it's if you believe in something, don't stop and just keep going and keep going. And you are a walking Kiddush Hashem, and it's really special to hear your story. And obviously, I've seen your other interviews and stuff, but this was a very, very fascinating conversation, and just to understand more about who you are as a person and just what you've built up. Just I have to say kol hakavod on behalf of the Jewish people. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. It's amazing. And just thank you for everything and for coming all the way out from Yerushalayim.
Wait, so now when are you joining the course?
When am I joining the course? You said I'm a gingy, so I'm already involved.
Yeah, you can take off 5 hours.
I'll take off 5 hours. So I have to join that I have to find out more information. And a lot of my chaverim in the neighborhood, I have to give a lot of credit for them. They're the ones that get in the cars on Shabbos. They're the ones that are moving. And it's to see what you've built.
I went on a call yesterday, just to finish with this story. I was getting a haircut. I knew I'm going to a podcast, a very important podcast. I have to look good. I didn't take a haircut for weeks. And as I finished the haircut, I get into my car. I get a call of a baby choking, 1.5 years old. Well, the whole reason I started United Hatzalah is because of a child choking. And I said, should I go or not? I put on my lights and sirens. I announced that I'm going to the call. And all of a sudden, 3 other guys are there already. I'm not kidding, like seconds after. This was in Ezra's Torah. And I said, okay, I'm going to go anyways, just because I want to say hello to the guys. Although we don't allow this. Usually we say when no more volunteers, not needed. So they're already there. And then one of the volunteers goes on the road. The baby's fine now. Everything's good. The mother was amazing, what she did to help save her son. And they got there, they were checking the baby and everything was good. I come down, the 4th floor downstairs, and I see the mother and she says, are you Eli Beer? I was like, yeah, I read your book. And it was like, nice to see. And she couldn't believe I was there. And I was checking the baby and she calming her down. She's American. She lives in Israel for a few years for her husband's in Kollel, and she's all alone. And I said to her, listen, my suggestion to you is our volunteers for free, United Hatzalah doesn't charge. We'll take you to get your baby checked just to see if everything's okay. No need to panic, but thank God the baby's good. And it was such a good feeling for me to know that I came after everyone. And everything was done already. Like I just came, but it was good I came because I knew English well and the woman was so happy to see me. And I remembered why I do this. And it really made, these guys, these volunteers who saw me, they were so happy. They were all taking selfies. And these are young kids, 30 years younger than me. And they're volunteering. And it just shows that it's just continuing.
That's amazing. What a story. And it's like a little kiss from Hashem. It's like, as you said, you started with United Hatzalah with, a choking baby, and fast forward 36 years later, that happened yesterday. And just your story is awesome. And I'm pumped to read this book. And hopefully everybody else who watches this is excited to read it.
It's an hard scroll, or you could actually get it on Amazon, 90 seconds. And if you get this one, I'm going to get the Angels in Orange, which is, I'll give it to you too.
Oh, yes. I'll take that. That's what I get for hosting the podcast and bringing you on. That's that. I don't know what else to say. I'm lost for words, and you're an amazing individual. And I just have to end off with a Chakar Satov. You are a very busy person. And as you said, you come to Israel for a few days. You came all the way from Yerushalayim, and you were gracious enough to come and give your time to be on this interview. And I'm grateful. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with myself and Eli. I have to take one thing from him, and hopefully we all take this, which is take the talents and abilities that Hashem gave you in your life and just run with them. And no matter who's doubting you, if you believe in yourself, hopefully Hashem will give you the siyata d'shmaya, the hand of God, to help you in the process of finding your role and mission in this world, just like Eli did. Thank you so much for watching this week. See you guys soon. Enjoy.